Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nari Wulandari. I'm from 7B, English Department of Sultan AGENG TIRTAYASA University. In today's video, I'd like to present my qualitative proposal to the Honorable Lecturer Ma'am Murti Ayu Wijayanti as the seminar on English language teaching subject. So without any further ado, let's get into the title of my proposal. The title of my proposal is The Use of Google Classroom During COVID-19 Pandemic, Student of SMP Kebangsaan Voices. Jump into the chapter 1. As the introductions, the researcher present background of study, problem of study, objective of the study, limitation of study, significances of study, and definitions of the key terms. As the background of study, the full e-learning system has become a new thing in Indonesia due to pandemic COVID-19. Therefore, the study tries to investigate how students' view of English e-learning using Google Classroom are applied. In other words, the researchers want to know that in the midst of the COVID-19, is the student were still learning well or not through the e-learning using Google Classroom system. The researcher made the problem formulation as what are students of SMP Kebangsaan perceptions toward English online class using Google Classroom during pandemic. The purpose of that is the researcher want to know the student of SMP Kebangsaan perceptions toward English online learning during COVID-19 using Google Classroom. There are two significances of the study. The first is theoretically and practically. The limitation of study. In this study, the researchers limit the problem mainly to know the role of Google Classroom and exploring student perceptions of English class using Google Classroom during the COVID-19 pandemic. There are four definitions of key terms. The first is Google Classroom, second is e-learning, third is perceptions, and fourth is COVID-19 pandemic. Jump into the chapter 2. In this chapter, the researcher attempts to explain the theoretical foundations that includes definitions of Google Classroom, e-learning, perceptions, and COVID-19 pandemic. As we know, the Google for Educations update the Google Classroom applications and add a few highlights that expect to improve the nature of Google Classroom, which e-learning is a term that can be found in the PC or web world. This term is comprised of two sections. E, which implies gadget and learning, and online learning can be characterized as a learning structure that utilizes electronic gadget as a medium. As stated by Waljito, perception is a process that preceded by the sensing process, which is the process of receiving stimulus by individuals through the sensory devices, or also called sensory process. And due to COVID-19 pandemic, COVID stands for corona, V for virus, and D for disease. Formerly, this disease was known as novel coronavirus. In November 2019 in Wuhan, China. For the literature review of related research, there are two previous studies. The first by Mihailova in 2005, which directed research to examine how to use e-learning as an internationalization procedure in further education by investigating the impressions of teachers and students. The second is from L. Seud et al. In 2014, which directs explorations to examine student inspirations on the impact of e-learning. From these two studies, the previous research have similarity with this study, where they all utilize e-learning in instructions. But in any cases, this research is imperceptibly not exactly equivalent to the above explorations, which this research separates understudy of perceptions. And next, in the chapter 3, the researcher is going to describe the research type, research site and time, research subject, technique of data collection, technique of data analysis, and the validity of data research. From the research design, I use the descriptive research with a qualitative approach because I would like to describe the conditions of the phenomenon. For the site and time, I choose 8th grade student of SMP Kebangsaan Pondok Aren Tangerang Selatan, while the collecting data are made by Google Form and interview by me. For the research subject, I choose 6 students of SMP Kebangsaan. For the technique of the data collections, there are 5 steps. The first is interview the student who are chosen. Second is make transcriptions from the interview. The third is encode the collecting data. The fourth is classify the kind of student perceptions. And the last is conclude the data. For analyzing data, I use the data reductions, data display, and data verifications. And to check the credibility of the data, I pick 3 angulations to check the credibility. Maybe that's enough for me. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.